Good morning, everybody. This week is class 11, and we're going to be working with quadrupeds. Now, just kind of wrapping up the semester here, we don't have much time left. We have we have class next week, and that's it. Well, we have two classes, but that would include our final class on the 4th. So we have class next week, which is the 20th. Then we don't have class on the 27th. That's the Thanksgiving break. And then we have class on the 4th, which is our final class. So actually, let me just bring up the syllabus here quickly just to show you what I've done. Um, Again, we've gotten through all of our research components, and we've done our bipedal walk and run. I removed the idle and wave. However, we'll cover next week in class. We'll talk about nonlinear mixing, but we won't have a project for it. So we will get that, but this is typically the project for nonlinear mixing. But because next week is the last class before our final class, next week we need to assign our final project, so we need to skip this one. So the assignment today will be the quadruped run or walk cycle, and that's what we're going to talk about in class today. And then that will be due for next week. And then next week we'll talk about nonlinear editing, and you could use nonlinear editing in your final project if you'd like, but we're not going to have a specific project for it. And then we'll work on our final project for 2 weeks from next week. So we'll have the week of Thanksgiving, and then it will be due the following week. And the final project, I actually changed this. This is the first time I've done this. I usually have game engine integration. Now, we will talk about game engine integration on our last class on December 4th, but we won't have a specific project for that either. So we're going to be covering the concepts, but we're pulling out some of the projects. Your final project is going to be kind of wide open. What I'm going to want from you, and we'll talk about this in more detail next week, I'm gonna want a multi-character interaction. So basically at least two characters. I would say I would stick with two. I wouldn't try to go with more than two. That's too many. So I say multi-character. So two characters interacting with each other in some way. That's it. It's up to you what you want to do with it. So that's brand new. I've never done that with this class, but I want to just open it up and let you do whatever you want to do with it. Because I don't want to. I don't want us to keep doing walks and run cycles and things like that. So completely open-ended. So we can talk more about that next week. So that's how the semester should wrap up. So let me come back to our lesson plan for today. So today, when we get together at noon, the first thing we'll do is we'll take a look at our fast runs and see how everybody did with that. We're going to take a look at a couple videos that I have here as we step into quadrupeds. This will give us some familiarity with working with quadrupeds. Oh my gosh, I actually don't have anything technical today to cover in this lecture. So this will actually be a lot of work together in class when we meet at noon. So we're going to cover this item 2 together. I also gave us a handout here, a PDF that breaks down the anatomy of the anatomy of a quadruped and how a quadruped moves. These are all things that, again, I think we will want to discuss together in face-to-face at noon. So I'm not going to really talk much about this. I might just bring up the handout now for just a minute, though, just to give us a preview of this. I need to scale it down so it fits in here. So the main thing I want to just point out right now is that the four-legged animal, and I think we've talked about this in the past, is not unlike a person. It's really a person. If you get down on your hands and not knees, that's what we usually do, right? Hands and knees. Well, that won't work. Hands and toes. So if you're standing on your hands and your toes, our body is almost identical to a quadruped. So here's our toes, and then here's our heel. The way a quadruped works is here's their toes. They're basically always walking on their toes, and they just happen to have an extended heel. So there's their heel. Then we come up to their knee. Then we go up to their hip. And the front part of the body works the same way. This is the hand. Here are the fingers. So this is the wrist. That's the elbow. And that's the shoulder. So they're actually designed just like us, except, if we got down on our fingers and our toes, and I like to point that out because before you start doing a quadruped animation, if you're capable of it, I would suggest doing this, getting down on your fingers and your toes and just paying attention to how all of your body parts move. And that's basically how a quadruped works. Now, there's some other information we have in here. Actually, this gives us the same breakdown there with an actual dog. And then, and it shows us different animals, but that technically they're actually all the same. They're just those joints are configured a little differently. And then here it talks about a breakdown of the, really you're doing 2 walk cycles or run cycles. It's a run cycle for the front of the body and a run cycle for the back. Now for the hind legs, it's going to be kind of simple because that's what we're used to. But thinking about how to do a walk cycle with our arms to get the front legs is where it gets a little more, I wouldn't say difficult, but we're just not familiar with it because that's not how we walk. So there's a couple things here talking about how to set up your poses. Some of the videos we're going to watch today, I think one of them talks about the process for, some animators will animate the hind legs first, then the front legs. So they'll do all the hind leg poses, contact, passing, and so on. And then they'll do the front legs. I don't like that. I work the same way I do with a biped. I like to do the whole pose. So, it's, and really the only way you can figure out what's going to work best for you is if you try this over and over and over again. So we're really only going to have one quadruped animation they hand in, and that's next week, and that's going to be a walk or a run. You can choose whether to do a walk or a run for your quadruped. So that's only going to be one pass at it. But if you only do that one pass, I guarantee you it's not going to look very good. You really need to do, I would say at minimal, do this 3, 4, 5 times before you do your final animation that you're going to hand in next week. You've got to do it a couple times. Just once, it's going to look awful, guaranteed. Quadrupeds are very difficult. So this is just showing us different ways to try to break down a quadruped walk. Oh, actually in a run. We have a run here also. So you'll want to take a look at this. This is a great reference. We'll see if during class when we meet together, if we might be able to find some more references also. So again, yeah, very, very good information in here. All right, let me put that aside. And the other thing I want to mention with quadrupeds, what I found in the past is, well, actually, as a matter of fact, let me bring up the 2 characters. So for our project next week, you have a choice of using Cody from Advanced Skeleton or the dog from this LinkedIn Learning lesson. Now this is just rigging a quadruped. It doesn't go through the process of animating a quadruped. They do have, I think, animating quadrupeds in 2D, and we're actually going to look at some of those, but they don't have any 3D specific ones in LinkedIn Learning. So you can either use the dog rig from this lesson or Cody. So I want to just show those to you here quickly. So let me put this aside. This is Cody here. This is the Advanced Skeleton one. So you can get that by coming over here and checking for online demo updates, and Cody's right there. You can just select that and have it placed into Maya. So the first thing you want to do with your rig is you want to just check everything out. And we know this already. Grab the foot controllers, see how they work, look at the channel box and see what additional custom attributes we have. Like for instance, here we have a swivel, we have a roll, and a number of other ones. See that's usually the first thing I do is I check out the IK controllers on the feet. Then you can come up and try to figure out where your center of mass is. And it looks like, because this is Advanced Skeleton, so we're pretty used to this. There's the, It's back at the hips. And then we have, up here, we've got the head controller. And then it looks like, I think the spine might be an IK. Yeah. So it works pretty well. Now, one thing right up front, I'll put it in this video so we have it. What I found the students tend to do, if you watch a dog, especially when it's walking, when a dog walks, their hind legs are fairly stiff. What I find a lot of students do is they think of the hind legs as if it's a biped, and they do a lot of this. And that's not really how a dog walks. They don't bend their legs like this or this much when they're walking. They might bend them a lot more when they're running, but when they walk, their hind end is fairly stiff. And if you're not familiar with that, or if you have a dog, great. Walk behind it and watch how the hind legs move. If not, see if you can find some videos on it. But that's the one pitfall I typically find, is that, especially in the hind legs, students tend to over-animate those hind legs. They're quite stiff when they walk. They actually, most of the action comes from their hips, not from the bending in the knee or the heel here, or the ankle, I guess you could call it. The front legs will bend a little more, but they also are slightly stiff. When a dog walks forward, they'll be maybe a little more like that on the front legs, but that's about it. And they don't have they don't have as much up and down movement as we do as a human when they walk. They have a little bit, but it's definitely much more muted than what a human has. So I just thought I'd throw that in here. So this is the Cody character. And now let me show you the other option you're going to have. So I'll just make a new scene here. Now this other file is, just to point out where it is, I put a link to it right here. Here's the lesson. So that brings you to here. And this is rigging a quadruped. Like I said, there aren't any modules in here that talk about animating. But what you can do is just grab the exercise files from right here. You grab the exercise files, and in those exercise files, let me bring those over on screen here. In those exercise files, I'll jump in here, exercise files. I'm going to go all the way to the last one. It says 3.3 finalizing. And I'm going to grab 3.3 end, this Maya file. That's the fully rigged character. So let me just move this out of the way, and I'm going to just drag and drop that Maya file in. Or you can do file open, whichever one you want. And there's this character. It's kind of like a little hot dog. So different rig, but it actually has a lot of the same controls. So again, what I'm doing to test it is I grab the IK controller and see how the character moves. I'll look at any custom controllers we have. Looks like we have one called Flex. Okay, I don't know if I would use that one. Swivel just changes the direction of the foot. And we've got toe tap. Ankle, what does ankle do? Oh, that brings it down at the ankle. That could be useful. Yeah, and then now let's take a look at the primary controller. Let's see if we can find that. I think that might be this one, and it is. So right there's the center of mass controller. Looks like we also have one for the belly. Now, just to test, some of these I test to see if they're just translate or just rotate or maybe both. So if I switch to my rotate tool, oh, that doesn't do anything. So this controller is set up actually as what would, in rigging, we'd probably call this a point constraint, because it's just simply moving the body. And that makes sense. We can get a little bit of secondary action in there as the character walks, because it has a long spine. It's right in the middle here. It might kind of sway up and down a little bit. And then we have the head controller up here, which I'm sure is FK. Or I'm sorry, not FK, rotation only. All right, so those are our two rigs that we have to work with for next week. So the other thing I would suggest is getting both of them and just playing around with them. Maybe I would try doing a run or a walk with both. That way you get, there's at least 2 passes at it with 2 different rigs. Then you come back and decide which one you want to work with for your actual assignment for next week. But you absolutely have to do multiple passes at this. If you try it once and just stick with that, it's probably not going to come out very well. So let's see if I come back to my lesson plan. I think that's really all that I wanted to mention here in this lecture video. And a lot of this other stuff, all these item 2s here, we're going to cover together in class. Yeah, so I think I'll just stop here and I will see everybody at noon.